Despite the long, sometimes unpronounceable names, I hope you have enjoyed over the last couple of weeks looking at the book of Haggai. I want to encourage you to read the Old Testament. I know lots of it is really difficult, but actually there's so much stuff in there that's really useful and really helpful for us. And it helps to understand what comes in the New Testament when we understand a bit more of the Old Testament. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't, sorry, too bad, but it'll be a long time before we get to Haggai again. Although there will be other Old Testament things coming up, I'm sure. So this is week 3 of our Haggai series. Now is the time. If you missed previous weeks, just very quickly, I'll fill in the backstory. We talked about what happened in 587 BC when the Babylonians, under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, destroyed Judah. That included the temple that Solomon had built. And that was more than just a physical blow to the people of Israel. It was a spiritual blow to them because this was the temple of God, and it was in ruins. For 5 decades then, the Jewish people were held in bondage. They were in captivity in the country that we now call Iraq. And so eventually, some of them, around 50,000, we think, were allowed to go back and to start to rebuild in Jerusalem. And you can imagine the excitement and the joy there would have been at that time when they were able to get back home. Some of them would have gone to a country that they didn't even know because they would have been born in captivity. But for others, it was a going home experience. They were going to rebuild not only their own lives, but they were going to rebuild a dwelling place for God. And then, if you remember in week 1, they started out really well and they built the foundations and they built the altar. But then when the opposition from the locals started, they gave up. So God raised up this prophet Haggai, and he said to them through Haggai, the time to build the temple is now. And they said, well, that's okay, but how do we do that? We don't know how to build the temple. So God broke it down into manageable bits for them. Number 1, go up the mountain. Number 2, bring down the wood. And number 3, build the temple. So they started, and quite quickly they became discouraged. And so as we pick it up today, we find that they're facing a battle that I think lots of people face today. As Christians, we feel as if we're trying to obey God. We're doing our best to do what he says. And yet we feel that life isn't really working out terribly well, that there are all these issues that we face constantly. And somehow, because we believe, it should be better. And you can almost feel the cry of the hearts of these Israelites saying, God, we are obeying you. We're doing our best, but where are you? Look at all this stuff that we're facing. Where are the results? Is it really worth obeying you and serving you? And I think that's a question lots of people ask today. If you have any experience of children, or sometimes even husbands, or a husband, you will be aware of a condition known as selective hearing. Please tidy your room. Oh, I never heard you. Please help with the dishes. No, I never heard you. Would you please hang out the washing? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I never heard you. But see, when you ever so quietly open a packet of chocolate biscuits, it's like vultures. They can hear it from 4 miles. Selective hearing. Does my bum look big in this? That's definitely one to avoid and hear selectively. Today, I want to talk about something similar to that. It's conditional obedience. As long as God continues to bless me, that's great. But as soon as faith begins to challenge, as soon as faith begins to cost me, well, that's just going a wee bit far. We kind of say, God, yes, I'll do what you want, as long as I see results. For me, the results that I want to see, results that I'm happy with. But, well, do you know, if faith makes me uncomfortable, or if it's inconvenient, or if you're not doing what I think you should, well, nah. I remember once when I was a student in training for ministry, I had been to a local shop. I was a student. Linda was teaching. We didn't have a lot of money, and I had taken £50 for something out of the bank. Don't even remember what it was for, but I remember doing that and walking back to the car. And here was the lady who was there regularly selling The Big Issue. And I quite often bought a copy of The Big Issue from this lady. She was outside the local supermarket. We had been at Clan Gathering, which is a Christian conference, and Jackie Pullinger had been speaking, and she was speaking about how we should relate to and respond to the poor in the world. And it was really challenging, really, really challenging. So I'm walking along the street, minding my own business, not really thinking too much about it, and here's this lady, and I felt that I should give her the £50. Well, I had this whole conversation in my head about how stupid that was, and God couldn't possibly want me to use that £50 in that way because it was planned for something else. And I bought my copy of The Big Issue, and I went home with the £50 in my wallet. And during that week, I saw her a couple of times after that, and each time I felt that I should give her the £50. And I rationalised it, saying, well, I don't have £50 anymore. I mean, the fact is, there was a cash machine about 200 yards away, but I rationalised it. She never got that £50 from me. And even although I saw her afterwards, I never felt the same again. I never felt that thing that I should give her money. But I felt guilty that I hadn't done what I think God was telling me to do. Conditional obedience. It's fine as long as it doesn't cost. And I think most of us can be like that. We love the verse that says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. That's a great verse. Love your enemies as yourself. You're having a laugh. Have you seen my enemies? Get a grip. Pray for them. Aye, I'll pray for them. I'll pray that you smite them. God, you see, wants us to be obedient. We can't really take the parts that we like and ignore the parts that are inconvenient for us or difficult for us. We can't really say, I'll obey as long as I'm comfortable, as long as it's not too challenging or too difficult. It becomes conditional obedience. But we need to understand, and what I think this text today is saying is this, that God does not give us options to consider, but commands to obey. God doesn't give us options to consider, but commands to obey. I think in this passage what we see is the corruptive power of sin. The people had turned away from God. Their hearts were not with him anymore. They had put their own houses, their own well-being, their own welfare before the welfare of God and his home. So Haggai comes, and Haggai is told by God to ask them some questions. In Haggai 2:12, he asked them this question, and to us it seems a bit daft, but he says, if someone carries consecrated meat in the fold of their garment, and that fold touches some bread or stew, some wine or olive oil or other food, does it become consecrated? Just so you know that in those days the priests would wear their robes, and they would carry the holy or sanctified meat, and they would fold it up like a little pocket. So what Haggai really is doing is saying is, if that robe, which is now touching something that is holy, brushes up against something that is not holy or is unclean, does the holiness rub off? And does that thing that has been touched become holy? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Holiness doesn't rub off. So I suppose a modern example might be, if I wash my hands are clean, and then I pick up a plate on which there has been spaghetti with all its lovely rich sauce, and I rub my hand in the sauce. Does the sauce become clean? Does the plate become clean? Or does my hand get covered in sauce? Well, clearly, my hand gets covered in sauce. It doesn't work the other way around. The dirt comes onto the clean bit. Sin spreads easier than holiness. It's a corruptive power of sin. Paul said it this way in the New Testament in 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad company corrupts good character. There is a corruptive power in sin. Like spaghetti sauce, it stains whatever it touches, and even a tiny little bit. I don't know how many of you have one, but I have so many pairs of trousers with a little stain just there. Right, just where you've dropped it when you're eating. And it's the only, when you put the trousers on, you don't see all the other clean bit. What do you see? You see the one tiny wee tomato stain. Because that's what happens. That tiny drop ruins the whole thing. It gets even worse, though, for these folks. Haggai 2:14. Then Haggai said, so it is with this people and this nation in my sight, declares the Lord. Whatever they do and whatever they offer there is defiled. We could put it this way, I suppose. When your heart isn't right with God, everything you do will be wrong. I think in my life, and I suspect in yours too, we do the, yes, Lord, I'll obey you. Yes, I'll obey you. As long as it works out for me. I'll obey you as long as it doesn't cost me too much or it's not too inconvenient for me. I'll give you 50 pence obedience, Lord, but not 50 pounds. And that is absolutely the wrong approach to God. We need to understand that we don't obey God because he will bless us or so that he will bless us. We obey God because we love him. It's all about the heart. We obey God because of who he is. We obey God because we love him and we want to honor him with everything that is in us. And that's why getting your heart right matters so much. Haggai 2:15. Haggai says to them, now give careful thought to this from this day on. Consider how things were before one stone was laid on another in the Lord's temple. If you were here in week 1, you would remember that we talked about this. Haggai told them, you're drinking, but you're still thirsty. It's like the guy in the video who said, I had everything. I had a job, I had a model wife, I had a fantastic car, and yet there was still something missing. I was looking for happiness in the wrong place. And that's exactly what these folks were doing. You're putting your money in your pockets, but they've got holes in them. You're doing everything you can to have stuff in this life, as much wealth and things and as much fun as you can, but you still feel as if there's something missing. You're consuming everything that you can, and yet there's never enough left over. You're working your backside off, but you're not getting to where you want to be. And you say, well, what's going on here? What's happening with this? And God says through Haggai, do you remember before you built the foundation? That's where you were. And in verse 16 and 17 he says, when you hoped for a 20 bushel crop, you harvested only 10. I struck all the work of your hands with blight, mildew, and hail. I just want to stop there for a moment. I don't like that picture of God. That doesn't fit with so much of what I think God should be like. I'm doing my best. I'm doing as much as I can. I'm trying my best. And you're stopping my crops growing. Why would a good God do that? Why would a good God not give me the best? Why would a good God bring blight and hail and all the other stuff? What kind of God is that? Is that really a God that I want to serve? Is that a God who really loves me? And then the next part of the verse helps us to understand. I struck all the works of your hands with blight, mildew, and hail. Yet you did not return to me, declares the Lord. And there's the reason. There's the reason it happened. You see, God's not trying to punish his people. God is trying to restore his people. He wants to bring them back to where they should be, to the relationship that they should have had with him. He's not trying to punish them. He's trying to restore them. We need to remember that sometimes God doesn't change our difficult circumstances because he's trying to change our heart. We all face difficult circumstances, and sometimes God, in those circumstances, wants us to change rather than changing the circumstances. Now, I am not saying that if something bad is going on in your life right now, you deserve it and God is sending it. I am not saying that. We need to understand that sometimes God may allow something bad to get our attention and to draw our hearts back. Difficult things happen for a whole variety of reasons. Sometimes it's our own poor choices. Sometimes it's just the reality that we live in a broken and sinful world and bad things happen. Sometimes it's a clear spiritual attack allowed by God often to make us stronger. And sometimes it's because he wants our heart. If you go back to week number 1, and I think this is why I love this book, it's because God is really simple in his love and concern and compassion for them. Week number 1, you remember the simplicity of God's message. They're like, we know we're supposed to build a temple, but we don't actually know how to build the temple. And God says, well, here's how you do it. Number 1, go up the mountain. Number 2, bring down the wood. Number 3, build the temple. It's not hard. Just do it. And that was really what was said in week 2. They'd started, but they'd got discouraged, and they wanted to give up. And in week 2, the message from God was, be strong and do the work. Put down another stone. Hammer in another nail, and another nail, and another nail. Just keep on going and do the work. Because I am with you. And the strength to do it doesn't come from ourselves. The strength to do it comes from God. Put down another stone. Stay in the game. Be faithful. One stone on top of another. One more nail. Be strong and do the work. And today, I think there is one simple message. And that is this. God says, I want your heart. I want your heart. More than anything else, God says, I want your heart. I want you to seek me with all of your heart. Matthew 6:31-33. Jesus says to them, so don't worry, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added to you as well. It's all about the heart. It's about seeking after God first. If your heart isn't right with God, then everything you do is wrong. But when your heart is right with God, you see him, and then you receive the blessing. So often we want it the other way around. I don't know if you've ever said to the Lord, yes, Lord, if only you would show me your glory, then I will. That's the wrong way around. It's let's seek the Lord, and then the things will be added. God doesn't mind if we have a nice house, as long as it doesn't take his place. We can be ambitious as long as it doesn't get in the way of our relationship with God. It's true that loads of people don't have very much money, but we should never use it as an excuse not to give generously. Seek first, and then we obey God because we love him, not in order to get a blessing. I think one of the problems for Christianity in the West is conditional obedience. Isaiah 29:13. The Lord says, these people come near to me with their mouth, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is based merely on human rules that they've been taught. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. I hope that is not true of me or of you. The beauty of this little story in Haggai is that God got their hearts. They turned back to him. They were obedient. They were blessed, not because they obeyed, but because they turned to him. So here they are, even though they haven't finished the temple. They've done the foundations, they've done the altar, but the work is not finished. And even so, God says, from this day on, I will bless you. It's not about having finished the job. It's that they had turned towards him in faith. Now is the time to get your heart right with God. Now is the time to repent of sin that you've rationalized or justified. Now is the time to stop giving lip service and giving him your heart and worrying about money and things. Now is the time. Haggai 2:18 and 19. Today you have completed the foundation for my temple. So listen to what your future will be like. Although you've not yet harvested any grain, grapes, figs, pomegranates, or olives, I will richly bless you in the days ahead. They hadn't finished the temple, but the blessing was there because they had turned to him. They gave their hearts to God. Above all else in this, God says, I want your heart. And maybe there's somebody here today, and if you're really honest, God is going to do a miracle in you. Nobody will see it on the outside because it's an inside job. We might be obeying outwardly, but inwardly we are rebellious and discontent. So let's not have lip service. Let's give him our hearts completely. Not because we want a blessing, but because we love him. And because it's what we should do in response to his love for us. Shortly we're going to have communion together. A reminder of what it cost Jesus to enable us to be his children. And the response of our heart is to love. With all our hearts, minds, soul, and strength. Amen.